Men love to say things like, if more women were virgins, everything would work out. Well, I have a story for you that proves that this is a lie. Men love to obsess over a woman's sexual past, but here's the cold hard truth: virginity doesn't guarantee you of anything. You can find that unicorn, that needle in the haystack, and marry a virgin and still fail spectacularly in your relationships. Virginity didn't save this marriage in the example I'm going to give you because it never really fixes what guys think it's going to fix. Now, today's stream is going to be uncomfortable for some of you, especially if you grew up religious. All right. It's about a couple who did everything right. They waited until marriage. They shared similar beliefs. They followed the rules. And now she's thinking about divorce. Now, before anyone freaks out, let me be clear. This is not an attack on faith. It's not an attack on virginity. It's not an attack on values. Okay. Values matter. Morality matters. And commitment matters. But here's the problem that nobody wants to say out loud, which is that values don't create desire. All right. Your beliefs are not going to teach you relationship skills, things like communication, building desire, leadership, all sexual polarity. And religion does not automatically give you relationship skills. All right. A lot of couples are told if you just follow the rules, everything's going to work out. And this is especially true with religious people. And most people in general, whether they're religious or not, they're really just clinging on to safe world theories. All right. Safe world theory is my word for an idea. It's my word to describe ideas and beliefs that people hope they cling to, and they hope that those ideas or beliefs will keep them safe from suffering and destruction. All right. They cling to the ideas, and if you challenge them, or if there's any sort of challenging that those ideas maybe are not the answer to keeping you safe, people have visceral reactions to it. They get really upset. This is why a lot of political discussions about religion, they get so charged, right? People get so angry and upset and emotionally charged because they cling. You all cling to beliefs that you think will keep you safe, and the idea that maybe the belief itself isn't going to keep you safe, that really upsets people. Well, the problem isn't even about the beliefs themselves or whether or not they're right or they're wrong. A lot of times the beliefs you're clinging to are actually good beliefs. All right. But the problem is the fact that you're clinging to them, and it's stunting your development and learning the skills and the tools you need in order to keep you safe. Well, here's a great example. Let's say my car, I have a vehicle and it's making weird noises, right? And it's not starting as quickly as it should. There's something going on. There's something wrong. Maybe I'm getting a light on, some sort of engine light or something like that, right? There's something clearly wrong with the car. What am I going to do? Am I going to go to church and pray about it? You can, as part of your daily practice. I'm not saying prayer is wrong, but you're going to take it to a mechanic, right? Eventually, hopefully. Are you just going to pray and not? You're going to pray, oh Lord, please send me a miracle and have my car working properly, and then not do anything about it? Some people do that kind of shit with things in their lives. Usually doesn't work out that well. Eventually, he's going to a mechanic, whether the tow truck is taking him there or not, right? If you want to learn how to work on your car, what are you going to do? You're going to go to church, you're going to read the Bible, and then hope that tells you how to change your alternator or your belts, or how to give yourself a tune-up. Or are you going to maybe watch some YouTube videos, chat GPT how to do something. If you have a working knowledge, or even better, go learn from a mechanic, take a class. See what I'm saying? Skill development is not the same as your beliefs and your morality. But for some reason, people think it is when it comes to things that their mammalian brain perceives as really risky. So when that mammalian brain, your monkey brain, as I call it, right, perceives something as a risk, you'll have a tendency, as most people do, to not face the reality of those risks, but instead to gravitate towards ideas and beliefs that are going to make you feel safe rather than help you develop skills. Cars, most people don't have a visceral monkey brain reaction to cars. Most people, religious people included, take their car to a mechanic. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty normal. How about learning how to defend yourself, fighting, protecting yourself from a threat? How many people take on that very seriously? Most people don't. Most people would rather think they'll be okay, and they have their mental gymnastics and ways of rationalizing around why that they can fight. Oh, I'm so tough. I don't have any formal training. Boy, when I get mad, I'm mad. Now I'm going to be able to fight. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to beat up 3 guys who want to take my stuff and assault my wife in front of my kid. I'm gonna get mad, and that's what's gonna keep me safe. And then I'll pray about it too, right? If it's a religious person, I don't know. How about learn how to fight? How about learn how to shoot? How about take a class from somebody who knows something? You see what I mean? Some people do that, which is good. Some of you would do that. Most of you watch me, all right? Probably would do that. Most of you who click on, scroll on, not interested in that. You're interested in just feeling good. Oh, my feelings. I got to feel good. Right? And then you get your ass beat, or, you're in front of your girlfriend or your wife, or your wife gets assaulted, or there's some threat that happens. The low statistical probability, if you live in a nice neighborhood, if you have a nice lifestyle, it's very low on the statistical probability you'll face a threat. But if unfortunately you draw that lottery ticket and you do, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? And so that's one of those things, being able to protect yourself. One of the biggest existential fears for a man is that he cannot defend himself or protect his family, right? So instead of facing that like a man, what do most people do? They pretend. They lie to themselves. They lie to their wife and their children. And they lie by saying and acting as if they could protect them. They posture. It's actually a thing if you read combat psychology, stuff like David Grossman, for example, who talks about posturing as a defense mechanism. And that's what most guys are doing. It's a weaker response, weaker man's response. Not always, but in this context, it is, right? Safe world theories. I got in a fight once in middle school, so that must mean I can really defend myself against a home invasion. I don't need to buy a firearm. Like, I know to my European clients and some of you guys, the idea of having a firearm is like, what? What do you mean? But you should probably face these ideas. You should face them. As human beings, we're tool users, right? That's how we excelled and became the dominant species. It wasn't because we were the biggest and most powerful. It was because we learned how to use tools, right? And that's what we're designed to do when it comes to fighting and defending ourselves. That's a whole nother topic, but that's just an example. We use safe world theories. Well, what do we do when it comes to sexual marketplace, dating, relationships? It's the same thing. Safe world theories. Well, if I just, she has a low body count, or if she's a virgin, then we're going to be just fine. Statistics say that virgins don't get divorced as often, so we're going to be fine. I'm telling you, virgin relationships break up all the time. And just as crazily and insanely as some of your other relationships. You're not safe just because of that one data point. You have to learn skills that nobody taught you. That's the thing, right? No, and the thing, and so you're clinging. Most people cling to these beliefs like a security blanket rather than taking personal responsibility for their own development. And that's what this is, right? And then they don't learn. If you're doing that, you don't learn. And no one is teaching you because everyone in your social circles, everyone that is in your bubble, they're in the same bubble you're in. They don't know shit. Like most of you guys, even you guys who know things, I know it's true for me too. Most of the people out in the world that you interact with are clueless when it comes to intersexual dynamics, sexual marketplace, relationship dynamics, dating, attraction, desire, seduction, right? Clueless. Most people are clueless about it and they don't want to face it because that is painful to face. Just facing that idea that I don't know what I'm doing here sends messages to the instinctual mammalian brain that you're in big trouble and it feels all kinds of weird. All right, at first. It doesn't make people feel uncomfortable. But here's the thing. It doesn't make people feel comfortable, rather. But here's the thing. If you want to achieve greatness in anything, you have to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. Okay? And that includes if you want to have a great relationship, time to get uncomfortable. You got to learn skills. And that means learning and facing the fact that you don't have them. And the guys, I use this example. I just did a video on former coach of U of M, Sharon Moore, and how he got himself in trouble with his executive assistant and blew his whole life up, ended up in jail. And actually, I have a lot of empathy for this guy. Now, I'm hard on him a little bit in the video, but I make the point several times. This is not to slam the guy or kick him while he's down, right? His story is the same story that many of you guys are guilty of right now watching me. You just haven't had the blow up yet. All right. The guy that's at risk isn't the guy who struggles with women or even the incel. When an incel comes to me for like help and coaching, know what his problem isn't right at that moment? It's not screwing his life up with women. A woman is not destroying that incel's life. He has other problems. He can't get the girl yet, so the girl isn't the problem. You're right. So, I mean, the girl can become the problem if he doesn't continue his skill development. But here's the good thing about the incel guy. And this is if you're that guy listening, I got good news for you. All right. Struggling with women is okay. Being like that incel and having these struggles doesn't make you weird, doesn't make you a bad person. You might be weird because you're weird, but it's not going to be just because you haven't had a date in a year. Okay. Lots of great dudes with a lot of things to offer haven't had a date in a year. And by definition, meet the definition of incel. All right. I'll tell you what, when those guys go to seek out help and they start to learn skills and develop skills on dating and just the initial dating piece of it, pickup, right? All those things. They already now have a mindset of skill development. So they tend to, if they overcome their issues with women and become not an incel anymore, they tend to have a real good probability of success for relationships in the future because their mindset is to learn. You see, those of you who are in the most amount of trouble, those of you are the guys who are not the incel, but hasn't learned a fucking thing. Just like with fighting, the guy that got bullied in school and like was weaker and couldn't fight, right? And had to learn how, was forced to try to pick something up, go to a boxing club, go to a martial arts school, try to learn some things, hit the gym. That guy, hell, I was that guy. That was me. When I was a little kid, I got beat up all the time. I wasn't a tough guy or whatever, It forced me to have to learn skills for my own survival. I mean, I didn't grow up in a terrible neighborhood, but I was certainly adjacent to terrible neighborhoods. And I certainly had a lot of bad influences growing up. And really, if I hadn't learned how to fight when I was young, I could have been in some serious trouble a number of times. Okay. So I was forced to in some ways. And once I started that skill development and I faced my own, mammalian brain, so to speak, faced down the fact that I'm a human being who could be susceptible to getting harmed, right? And treated it like a skill set, that changed everything. And I did that when I was young, when it came to the fighting, right? And so you don't have that problem. And then that extended into a military career later, that same mindset. When you have to learn a skill because you're bad at it, like when I was young, I was physically weaker. I had some little like physical ailments and stuff going on when I was in elementary school. I wasn't a tough guy. You know what I mean? I remember a couple of kids I grew up with who were the tougher kids. I was always like, man, these kids are cool. I wish I could be like them, And then I grew up, but I treated it like a skill set, trained it. So what that means is I'm a lot less risk. With my background now, I'm a lot less risk of having harm come to me from violence. Far less risk than most people. All right. And I have the skills to handle it because I faced that down. The incel guy, that's what's good, is if he can get out of that, he's got to learn skills to get out of it. But if he can get out of it, his mindset's geared towards learning skills, and then he excels in a relationship, excels in his relationships down the line. The guy that is at most risk is the guy who didn't need to learn the skills to fall into vagina. The guy who falls into pussy, occasionally gets that date, occasionally gets the girl. He's got enough of a, SMV. He's got enough social skills in order to be able to talk to girls and get them. That's the guy okay, probably listening. A lot of you listening right now, at least half, probably more, right? Of you listening to me. You're the one who's at risk because you have the illusion of thinking you have the enough skill in 2025 to overcome a global sexual marketplace that will eat you alive, a social conditioning to a level that we've never seen before that conditions men and women to destroy their relationships, as well as an inbred instinct for you to mate switch after a few years. You understand that your mammalian brain, your instincts, according to our evolutionary past, is not designed for you to pair bond and have a 40-year marriage, 20-year marriage, 10-year marriage. It's not designed for that. It's designed for you to meet somebody, get them pregnant, have the relationship blow up in a couple of years so you can get somebody else pregnant so that you're dead from tetanus or something at age 31 or something like that. Okay. We may have had the capacity as human beings to live longer, but statistically we didn't because of disease and violence and all of the things we had before the agricultural evolution, before modern society, before medicine. You know what I mean? So we didn't evolve through most of our histories to have these long, fruitful relationships. You have to put effort to have that. If you want that, there's a ton of benefit to it. It's a good thing to make as a goal. You want a long, healthy marriage or healthy LTR. I think that's great. That's what I help people do every day. But you gotta learn skills to do it. You know what I mean? You're not just gonna naturally do it. And if you have enough natural ability to accidentally fall into pussy, to accidentally get married, I say accident because it sort of just happens to you and you execute very little knowledge or skills to do it because no one taught you. And then you think, oh, this is where the idealistic thinking comes from. God brought me my wife, she's the one, that thinking comes from it being assortative mating and basically chance that you ended up with somebody rather than skill. So it supports or promotes this, fantasy type thinking. Well, here's the thing. Okay. Yeah, we're meant to mate with each other, have sex, and have babies, which is why you accidentally fall into a relationship. All right. But if you want to keep it together and have a good relationship, you have to learn the skills. Just like if you want to keep that classic car running, you got to figure out how to maintain it. You have to figure out the skills and how to work on it, or take it to somebody. Well, you're not going to take your wife to somebody who can work on her better. I hope not. Right. But you get what I'm saying. You got to learn the skills, man. That's it. Okay. And so people aren't going to teach you skills in your bubble. You got to get outside of your bubble to do that. And speaking of which, okay, that's where my community comes in. It takes you outside of your bubble. My community is not filled with a bunch of clueless men. Okay. My community is going on 800 strong right now. And it's a bunch of guys who really are geared towards mentally towards improvement. And they have the mindset towards that. And they're having discussions about that just about every day. And of course, I'm in there too, giving people help. And it's at a no cost. All right. And I have courses in there that are no cost as well. With that, we're going to do a little bit of a 2-minute ad. Then we're going to get into this virgin marriage situation. All right. So check this out for about 2 minutes. Psychopaths are evil, but they are successful. And not because they're evil. They're successful because they're effective. The average man is drowning in overthinking, fear, people-pleasing, and hesitation, while the most ruthless personalities walk through life winning, while you are struggling and you are losing. But here's the truth. You don't need to be a psychopath to win. You just need to learn the traits that they mastered and use them without being immoral or having poor ethics. Focus so sharp that it cuts through distraction. Charm that bends social dynamics. Resilience that makes you unshakable. Ruthlessness, but with empathy for others. The ability to say no without guilt. Fearlessness in the moments that matter. Mindfulness that kills anxiety, and action taking that separates leaders from followers. This isn't about becoming a terrible person. It's about becoming powerful. Someone who leads, someone women trust and desire. Someone who commands his world instead of just reacting to it. And that's why I created the Psychopath's Playbook, a complete system for the good men, the non-psychopathic men, but for men who want the results without becoming evil, and without wasting years of trying to figure it out alone. This is an inner game course that will allow you to tap into that thing that you have been missing, that thing that's inside of you that will allow you to make more money, seduce women, and succeed. If you're ready to unlock the traits that make the world's most effective men untouchable, click the link and get into the community. When this course drops, you will get your exclusive announcement, and you'll be on the list before it fills up. And together, we'll make you unshakable, undeniable, and unstoppable. This is where your old self ends and your rise begins. I'll see you there. All right. That's fun, isn't it? All right. So that's a course that's going to be dropping here. I'm probably going to open it up right after Christmas. And I'm going to open up enrollment. I'm limiting my numbers probably to 50, I think. That way, when we do our live coaching calls, I have the ability to answer everybody's questions and all that. So you have to be in the community to get the invite. All right. Or at least either be on my newsletter email list or on the community to get the link to sign up, right? To be able to get on the list and all that. And so go do that. A lot of you guys got your goals and stuff for the new year. Well, this is the inner game course that's really going to help you. And it's not just the girls, a lot of people come to me starting off with the relationship stuff and they stay because of the inner game stuff. I'm helping a lot of people level up their life, change their careers, move into higher levels of wealth and financial stability. More than stability at that point when you're getting into $1 million type people, right? Multimillionaires and all that. So yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I mean, part of my background here is performance psychology, not just relationship stuff. But the Psychopath's Playbook will give you skill sets to apply to both. So it'll be a fun course. I'm looking forward to it. And that's that. So let's get into now the stuff. All right. So this should be a fun stream because I don't have any talking points. I kind of went through my talking points already, more or less. I mean, they really very loosely, and that can be actually a lot of fun because then it's like, more of an interaction with you guys. Who knows what I'm going to say? I don't know what the fuck I'm going to say. We're going to, well, we're going to read this story here. Okay. And, got a few others if I have time, but I think we'll stick to this one to start off. If you guys, I'm going to share that. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Really helped me with identity work after retiring from the military. Hell yeah, man. It's been good. It has been good. And so, cool. At any sense, kind of going through. All right. So if you guys got comments, super chats, little stickers, or whatever they let you do here at YouTube, those things help the algorithms. Obviously, your subscription and your like button is going to help the algorithms more than anything else. All right. So I appreciate that if you guys can do that. All right. So now I'm going to read into this little vignette here. So she starts off with the woman is writing it. She writes, I, 30-year-old female, have been seriously contemplating divorcing my husband, 34-year-old male, since he got sepsis early this year. So she starts off, I know this sounds bad, so let me explain the whole story. I grew up in a very religious household and was pressured to do everything right. We got married when I was 19 and had only been together for about 6 months. Before then, we were both virgins when we got married, so things were awkward to start. He also had not dated much before me, so a lot of what had happened I excused for him not being experienced or because he had ADHD. Okay. So this is where we get into it's a trade-off, all right? And this is why, like, you have to put your mindset towards success and getting what's going to give you the best outcomes, regardless of the cards you've been dealt. So what do I mean by that? Some of you guys are watching this in your 30s, right? Let's say you're 28 years old, 32 years old, whatever, and you're not married yet. I literally will have guys or women be like, man, I should have got married when I was young and I should have followed what the church told me and I didn't. And I was stupid. And here I am, I'm single. What do I do? Right? Like, people focus on things they can't change in order to make excuses for not getting better. Maybe it would have been better if you got married when you were 19 or something like that, like this couple, but maybe not. Maybe not. I can't say from data or objectively that that's true. I mean, we know that people who have less sexual promiscuity before getting married, for example, have better marriage outcomes by statistics, but that doesn't mean every individual is going to be a part of that statistic. You know what I mean? It's not the only number to look at. Plus, we know on the flip side is that young marriages tend to not work out. The younger the marriage is, to a point, I'm going to probably mess this up as I say it, but marriages under 25 years old basically have much higher divorce rate. It's because of the reasons she's expressing so far, which is the lack of life experience. So there's a trade-off. Do you marry somebody when you're 18, 19? You don't know what you want in life in order to, mitigate certain problems like sexual promiscuity, ruining pair bonding, and some of these things, but yet you don't have any experience in life or in relationships. And then what happens? Things could blow up for you that way. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad way to go, what I just said, but you got to ask yourself, this is where being mission focused and success minded comes in. If you're 18, 19 years old, you're going to do that. You're going to make that marriage move. All right. What do you have to do to mitigate problems? That's the question you need to ask yourself. If you're 19, you're getting married, you don't know anything. And probably the people around you don't know anything. Okay. They know how to moralize things. They know the rules. Maybe if your church is correct, let's assume your church is correct. Let's assume their church is correct. Okay. Their church might be able to keep them out of hell, which is pretty good. I would say that's a pretty good goal, right? Might not keep them out of divorce though. Okay. So what do you have to do to mitigate it? If you are 32 years old, let's say 32-year-old female, I only have like a handful of females who watch me, but let's say you're a 32-year-old female, right? And you went through way too many bodies. Okay. What are you going to do? Go back in time, hit the reverse button, roll back the odometer on your vagina? Nah, probably not. It's not going to work, right? How about learning some relationship skills and tools and doing some personal development so that you're a higher value woman despite your past experiences? Oh, ding, ding, right? If you're a guy who's made, let's say you're in your third relationship and you've been through 2 divorces. You're going to go get married again and be divorced again? Is that what you're going to do? Or are you going to go learn some skills? I'm not saying to get married or not to get married. That's a personal choice. What do you if you are going to get married, right? Like, we know there's problems with the state and there's problems psychologically speaking with the framework around marriage just due to the social conditioning we have and the social messages we have in our country right now, in the first world right now. So what are you going to do? Well, if you do get married, you're just it's a trade-off, and you're going to mitigate those problems then. What are the problems that I have to face with the trade-off decision I'm making? You see what I mean? That's how you have to think. This is how people who are success minded think. They don't say, like, they don't focus on the things they can't fix or change in order to shame themselves into not getting what they want. They focus on the things that they need to focus on. And this couple, I mean, no one told them. They're young and probably didn't have any guidance, but there's a whole lot of relationship related skills that they would need to be learning for probably at least the next decade, right? Because the problem is, and here's part of that trade-off, a young girl who's following the rules and gets married, she's only doing it because her identity lines up with following those rules. She's always going to be curious if those rules are giving her the best deal, right? She's still a woman. She's still going to be hypergamous. So are the rules going to keep her, like, were the rules the best deal she could have gotten? That's the question she's always going to ask until she realizes that the lifestyle she's living is the best choice. And she realizes that down to her level of emotions, right? Down to her experiences and her emotions. She's going to constantly question whether getting married was the right decision. Was being a virgin bride at 19, was that the right choice? Because you're always going to have struggles. People who have the perfect life have struggles. They just have better struggles. You know what I mean? And we can always question whether or not I've made the right choices and whether or not the grass is greener somewhere else when I run into difficulty. When you run into difficulty, when you run into struggles, you can always ask yourself these questions. And that's what women do. A lot of times they go, oh, wow, well, I'm in this marriage, we just got laid off. There's some financial struggles. I got married when I was really young, and all of my girlfriends, they partied a lot and had a lot more fun than I did. Maybe they didn't have more fun, right? But that's what she might think. And then, well, my one friend, she seems to not be struggling, and her husband's rich. Like, so maybe I didn't make the right choice. You know what I mean? That's what happens. People have struggles. Instead of saying to themselves, how do I face these struggles and solve these problems? Instead of, when making a decision, anticipating what problems am I going to run into? How can I mitigate these problems? They just sort of wait for problems to have, and then they go, man, if only I'd made better choices, I wouldn't be in this predicament. So now I'm going to make some knee-jerk reaction type of decisions in order to get out of it, And so that's what happens a lot of times. All right. A woman who's getting married young isn't having the certain life experiences, and that's probably a good thing, but she needs to recognize that that's the case. You know what I mean? So continue with what she wrote. Throughout our marriage, there has been an unfortunate stack of red flags that became glaringly obviously to me when my husband got sick. Those of you guys who know, you know. I'll keep reading. When he got sepsis, I found myself wishing it was me, and it was not in and it was not an altruistic way, which surprised me. I had to drop everything to make sure he had taken care he could be taken care of, and put my feelings. Sorry, I'm switching. Lost my spot. And put my feelings to the side to dissect later. So she was wishing, oh, I wish I were sick and someone could take care of me. Interesting. After a week, he was finally able to come home, but still struggled to walk for a while. During this time, I took care of everything, including talking to his bosses at work and figuring out, I don't know what FMLA means, but that's what she wrote, and making doctor's appointments on top of usual responsibilities as a mother. And during this time, I started to understand what it was that made me feel that way. I understood that he never did the same for me. Now, understand, she's never been bedridden. She's going to explain some of that in a minute. Okay. But I want to point something out here that many of you guys know. Oh, thank you. Family Medical Leave Act. That's what that is. So thanks. That is cool. So at any rate, want to point something out here. This is really important for you understanding how to manage your relationships. Women don't have vasopressin, guys. Not for you. They have vasopressin for the children. Now, what I said sounds like Greek to many people who just come to my channel. They have no idea what I'm talking about. So let me explain. Okay. Men pair bond, right? Bond romantically, the love feelings. That's what the literature calls a pair bonding. All right. It means the love feelings, the feeling that that's your person to mate with and have relationship with and raise children with and grow old with, all those feelings. Okay. Those feelings, all right, come from neurochemicals in your brain. There's a combination of them that work in conjunction. I'm going to talk about the important ones for this discussion. Okay. So you have your bonding chemicals are generally your oxytocin, all right, your vasopressin, and your beta endorphin. Beta endorphin is like that, it's like a comfortable couch. It's like, oh, I feel comfortable. I feel familiar with this person. I feel good, familiar. This is that, whatever. It's not sexual desire. It's not desire. It's not what drives the passion in the relationship. It's what drives that comfortability. That's beta endorphin. And both men and women have that. Okay. So they bond with that. That's over the long haul though. So that takes some time to really associate that beta endorphin with your other person. And then you have the oxytocin and the vasopressin. Now, oxytocin is the warm feeling that you feel when you're like in love with somebody. Think post-orgasm. All right. Now, some of that post-orgasm feeling is serotonin as well, but it's just that good feeling, but not good like I just ate a meal, which is serotonin also, but good like this is my person. Let's do the after sex cuddling. That's oxytocin, right? Okay. Now, thing about oxytocin is that because of the good stress and the dopamine from getting a new partner in the love bombing phase, that sounds like toxic relationship. We'll say in the, the honeymoon phase, that oxytocin is pumping high and blood levels of oxytocin are higher. And they can actually there's a study that showed that you can do a blood test and see if your baseline serum levels of oxytocin was higher in the beginning of the relationship. They could predict basically who is going to break up within 6 months. So lower oxytocin baseline levels in the blood in the beginning meant breakup 6 months later. Higher meant probably staying together. So in the beginning, you get all this oxytocin. Thing is, as a relationship keeps going, what happens is the good stress from the unfamiliarity and uncertainty goes away because now you know the person. And the beta endorphin kicks in. All right. And that dopamine now to try to get that person goes away too. Not my relationship, by the way, because I use the right skills to make sure that doesn't happen. Not in the guys who are in mastermind group who have thriving relationships, by the way. Okay. They're constantly able to stimulate that good stress and that dopamine to make for good sexual experiences, to get high oxytocin responses, even if they're 10 years into a relationship. That's what you have to do. That's the maintenance part of your relationship involves that. Nobody's talking about that. They're not talking about that at church. They should. That'd be nice. They're not doing it. Okay. And they're not talking about it in couples therapy. Nobody's fucking talking about this. I don't know why, but they're not. Some people are, obviously, neuroscientists and things like that, but you got to find that stuff, right? The mainstream narrative isn't manage a high sexual frequency in an intense sexual relationship so that you stay in love with each other. That's not a narrative that people like, because that takes power away from women, and there's a whole feminist thing with that, and it doesn't really take power away from women, but they perceive that in that way. And so now we got a gender war, whatever. Okay. But that's the thing. Okay. So you have this oxytocin that you have to manage. Now for guys, we have vasopressin because we have higher testosterone. Vasopressin, and we have significantly higher testosterone, by the way. It's not even a little bit. We have a lot higher, like many, many times more than the average woman. Even a high testosterone woman would be extremely low. Like a guy would need medical intervention if he had a woman's level of testosterone. Okay. So we don't have estrogenic bodies. If we're men, we have testosterone based sort of driven bodies, and that interacts with vasopressin to make us protective over our romantic companions. So this is that thing that makes you want to, when she has bad emotions, that's why when a girl cries, a guy's like, oh my God, my girlfriend's crying, my wife's crying. How do I get her to stop crying? It's okay. Shh, it makes us want to take care of her. It makes us want to makes us jealous too. You're looking at my woman, it makes us want to, makes us want to protect her. Right. These are good things. They're good qualities. They're things that we need. Okay. But that vasopressin, what that means is this, and the oxytocin goes away because you didn't manage the desire in the relationship. A guy still has vasopressin because he has the beta endorphin that says, this is my person. So the vasopressin says, I need to protect her. She's in my tribe. She's my person. She's my wife. I got to protect her. I got to make sure she's okay. Got to make sure she's happy wife, happy life, all that bullshit. That's vasopressin. Okay. She doesn't have that for you. So here's what happens. To a lot of guys, a woman gets sick, a woman's pregnant, whatever. He's doing things to kind of take care of her. If he is in a masculine protective frame, he has significant amount of vasopressin to want to take care of her. So what that means is because look, vasopressin isn't just by operating on its own, it's operating with your testosterone levels, right? So if you are a guy who is physically taking care of yourself, and you see yourself as a protector, you see yourself as a leader, you see yourself as somebody who wants to care for a wife, okay, you're gonna want to take care of your wife when she's pregnant, because because all the things I mentioned increase your testosterone levels. Just thinking about it, get in a posture over it, right? They make higher testosterone, and that higher testosterone interacts with vasopressin. I am an armchair neuroscientist. I am not Andrew Huberman. I'm sure that they could explain it better, but I know I'm right. Right? So I know I'm on the right track. Okay, there's maybe nuances and details, but this is the right track. So that's a guy. Now let's take a different guy. Let's take a guy who gets married. His T level goes down. He's lazy, right? He's operating like closer to a woman. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't he doesn't care and protect for his wife. He feels like the kid in the relationship, and the wife is sort of, the boss, right? What happens? He's trying to get out of, hospital detail and duties like a damn teenager when she's pregnant or when she's in the hospital. That's what happens. He's getting resentful because he's got to take care of her, right? That's what happens to lower T men. I mean, we could study this. I don't, there's not, but this is what the neuroscience says this should probably be true. We need to see a clinical trial on it. Okay. But when we look at neuroscience, this is probably true. And it seems to bear out when we just look at examples. You know what I mean? It's a lot of dominant guys are either psychopathic and they don't care to take care of somebody. Okay. Cause they have psychopathic tendencies, or they are vastly like extremely wanting to take care of somebody, the person that he sees as his person. You know what I mean? We vet out for dominant A personality types that are not too far on the psychopathy scale. There are a little bit is okay, but not too far for things like special forces. You know what I mean? CIA has their own version of things, right? When Navy SEALs, sure, whatever. I was never a SEAL, but so when we do selection process for special operations, we want guys who are team players, right? All these guys, I'm going to tell you, all these team guys, okay, in the special operations world, made it through a selection. You have some that are psychopaths and total, they usually get themselves in trouble, get kicked out, stuff like that. They're usually a troublemaker, right? But the guys who are valued on teams are guys who have a high degree of testosterone and a high degree of vasopressin. They want to protect their tribe, man. And then they tend to get in marriages and they want to protect their wife, take care of her, lead, all that stuff. And without the skills that can actually get them in trouble. It's a great trait to have, but they can wife up the wrong person, not have the right types of skills. And now they're just loyal to a fault to some woman who doesn't value him. And this is how a lot of military, police, right, those types of marriages end up in domestic violence, end up broken up, okay, end up toxic because the guy is loyal and he finds himself and he's got that high testosterone. He's also has high vasopressin. He wants to take care of things, but then she's not participating and it creates a lot of problems. You see what I mean? And he doesn't have the tools and the skills to direct, his emotions in the right way. And that can lead to, him doing things he shouldn't too. So anyways, these are things that happen, right? This is like the nature of the world. So why am I saying this? And though in relationship to the virgin bride here, okay, girls don't have vasopressin for you. If she does, she sees you as a child and she doesn't have sexual attraction for you. So not good. Okay. She has that protective instinct over her child. That's the mama bear thing. You don't want a mama bear as mama bearing you as the husband or the boyfriend. That's not good. Okay. That means she doesn't want to have sex with you. That means she sees you as another kid in the house. Okay. Not a good thing. Right. But what does that mean? That means you get sick. You have a little weakness. She's not going to have this vasopressin kick to take care of you. She's not going to want to do that because in the same way that you would want to do it for her. Okay. Now, there's a lot of caveats here. I'm not saying because someone's about to chat, someone's halfway through writing. Well, my wife would take care of me or whatever. Or, hey, well, I've seen a guy get sick once and his wife took care of him for 10 years. I understand that. Let me finish. Right? So the times when a woman takes care of the guy, it's not because of vasopressin. If she has desire for the guy, assuming it's not vasopressin. Okay. If it were vasopressin, she would resent that guy. She would be like, she wouldn't see him as a romantic partner. She would be looking at other guys to want to have sex with, basically. Okay. So when you get the case of the loyal wife who takes care of the husband when he's sick and dying or when he's going through that, which is something those of us guys who get into LTRs, we want the type of woman that would do that, don't we? So there's two things in place. One, desire. Okay. A woman does that because she sees you as the alpha male in her life who is now wounded. And you're still the strong alpha male, though, in her life. So she wants to take care of you and either nurse you back to health or take care of you and keep you comfortable until death. because you're the best she's ever done, and you're the best that she thinks she can do. And she just is, and that's what creates that love for her, that she has for you. When she looks at you with respect, when she looks at you with admiration, when she looks at you as that guy who plays that role and played that role in her life, she she has the emotional tendency to want to take care of you. She's not going to want to take care of you if she doesn't have that. She doesn't see you as this dominant masculine leader in her life. Then it's not the way that she's going to, things become transactional, things become opportunistic, and she's going to more resent having to take care of you or having to do her duty for her husband if she didn't have that desire. Okay. So that's why desire is so important, because it does two things. One is it maintains the relationship, but the other is it imprints. So if you leave high desiring imprints on a woman, her subconscious mind can never forget that. You know what I mean? And so it's both of those things. This guy and this young couple, obviously desire was not maintained. So it becomes transactional. So she's not dedicated in taking care of him because he's a dominant alpha male. And as I'll read on and you'll see by her description, although we don't have both sides of the story, he's a pretty weak male. And that's why, you can be sick and laid up and dying of cancer. You could only have, hey, I'm dead in 2 months, but you still have a dominant mindset. You know what I mean? I can think of my grandfather. He got sick because of a heart thing. He was strong. Like, he was cutting down trees and lumberjacking, in his 80s. Right. And then all of a sudden, heart ticker ran into a problem, hardened arteries, couldn't fix it. He was dead in 2 months. He was an alpha guy till he stopped breathing. Meant right up here. He had his shit together. It's your inner game. And so that's why I say your inner game is the most important. More important than your height, more important than your physical characteristics, more important than your money, more important than anything is right here. If you have a dominant mindset and you have stimulated throughout the relationship high experiences and her having a high desire for you, you could be laid up. This guy who had sepsis, if he had a dominant mindset, he'd have his woman in check and she'd be taking care of him and she would feel gratitude towards it. So that's one half. Now, the other part of the equation is her own identity. If you pick a woman who doesn't have gratitude in her life and who has all kinds of toxic traits and who doesn't bond with someone very well and who's selfish, and who's transactional in her thinking, if you pick that woman, it doesn't matter how dominant and alpha you are. She's probably going to leave you when you're on your sick bed. Okay. Seen that too. Another family member I will not mention, but he remarried a woman who was not of good character. He was a dominant guy in his mindset. He wasn't wealthy. You know what I mean? He was not a wealthy guy or anything like that. He had a good, like, dominant inner game, but he didn't have good selection skills with women. And I don't know that his management skills were that great. Actually, his management skills were probably pretty good because he did keep her in line most of the time, but she had cheated on him a few times. Don't have, know exactly how many, but we know she pretty much did. And when he was dying of cancer and it was eating his brain partially, and he's getting bed sores at home because she's not taking care of him. And she's out at the bar picking up on another guy. And she was in her late 60s. Right. So being a hoe, you don't grow out of being a hoe. Let me just tell you. All right. 304 behavior isn't something these women grow out of. They will always revert back to that if that is their character. Okay. So you have to maintain desire. You have to have high character. I don't know that this woman had poor character. I think it's a desire situation when I read this vignette. Okay. So we'll continue. Make sure you guys hit that like button, damn it. Ho, no mo. This is unfortunately true. Don DeMarco, thank you very much. Many churches will support the woman no matter what, no matter what happens. Sadly, yeah. It's that gynocentric social order. The trad con grift right now on social media and Twitter, right? Which is these traditionally conservative women who are boss babes and who are really feminists in disguise. If they don't run the show, if they're not in charge, they lie. They say, "Oh, my husband is a good leader and a servant leader." That's the thing the Christians will say. I get the idea, but the way it's being used is wrong. You know, um, servant leader, just like the Lord, just like Jesus. It's like, nah, I don't think you're doing that. I don't think you're being exactly what Jesus would want, which is, the woman's the boss. I'm sorry, she doesn't. Women who are the boss and who have that mindset are that way because they haven't had a man hold leadership over them in a way that, she can trust and that where she can be in her feminine. And it's possibly her dysfunctional way of thinking that won't allow her to be in that relationship. So, in other words, the dominant man who would put her in her place makes her feel like she's in a toxic relationship, even though that guy would also take care of her and she would have a much better time. So she leaves and she gets with guys who she can control. That's the thing. And then they go to church, and then the church gets used to control male behavior. Most of what's going on right now is controlling male behavior. I'd say we're controlling everyone's behavior. So, big companies can take your money, but big part of it is guys getting their behavior controlled. And the churches, unfortunately, are doing that. Now, I'm not telling you to abandon your Christianity. I'm telling you to go to church and fix it. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say. So people see these criticisms, they'll get Christians mad at me. Like, don't be mad at me, dude. This is for your benefit. I want Christians to do well. I am a Christian. I don't wear that on my sleeve as much because I don't know if I'm the greatest example. You know what I mean? But I do my best. And I would love to see the churches being more successful in promoting healthy relationships. And so that's why I do these things. That's why I do them, This is a good question before I keep finishing. If a girl who is a virgin but consumes a lot of hardcore explicit content, either in dark romance novels or similar adult videos for years, would her pair bonding be affected? Yeah, sure, it would be. It's a matter of degree, though. I will say this: consuming content through novels is way different than consuming visual content through pornography. That's a whole rabbit hole, really, though, to go down, like a whole hour-long video to talk about it. Here's the thing. Here's what I'm seeing. Not all researchers will agree with all the details, though, because we still unfortunately have this social dynamic in the academic world that men and women are the same or have to be the same. So be outside of the biological realm, like where you're dealing with medicine, right? It's like, if I say that women are affected differently than men or men are affected differently than women, it's like, oh, we can't just say that, even though we see all of the anecdotal evidence and we see it out in the field. Well, we got to design a research. We need more data. We got to design research to tell us that's true. Otherwise, we're going to presume it's not true. And this is, I guess that's the way, like, so academia, right? Like evolutionary psychology, and any science worth it, right, does need to have evidence and data to back up a claim. But here's the problem. They assume men and women are equal unless there is specific data to prove that they're not. And I think if we're dealing with intersexual dynamics, we have to assume that men and women are different and then see what the data says, right? So I can't assume that my response as a male is going to be the same as the average female. But academia says, well, they're probably going to be the same unless we have data to prove it otherwise. I think that is flawed. And I would love to debate like Mac and Murphy or somebody that I admire, on the Evo Psych realm. David Buss would be cool, I wouldn't really debate him though. I'd just be asking him 50 questions because he's awesome. All these guys are awesome though, right? But I mean, but it's like I love to debate on that topic because why are we assuming equality when we have enough evidence to prove that men and women evolved differently when it came to mating, and that our goals are different, and the way our brains developed are different, our reproductive, goals and perceptions and values are different. So why would we assume equality? Why would we assume that they're the same? So I can understand not assuming that men and women respond to pornography, not to make a claim without evidence, but why would we assume men and women are the same? So I'm mentioning that when it comes to this pornography thing, because it seems or appears that women are less affected by visual pornography than males. All right. So women it's one of those weird things. Like men seem to be less affected by notch counts on a neurological level. It seems that way. Not a lot of data though. So I'm just saying what it seems like, right? We need more data to show the differences. They don't want to put together that data though. Understand the reason why we don't have it is because anything that says men and women are different is considered very controversial. You won't get your paper published. You won't get funding for the study. I mean, these are the things that these people would run into a lot of times. Anything controversial that says men and women might be different, not so good, especially if it's going to make women look unfavorable. Notch counts, for example, I think that we know based on observation that notch counts affects a woman differently than a man, and it affects them worse than a man. At the very least, it affects them differently. And I'm not saying a guy having tons of notches is good necessarily. I'm not saying that. Okay. But we know, I mean, we're not, if you're of average intelligence and you see what's going on in the dating market, that a woman sleeps with 100 bodies. It's way worse than when a guy does it. Like we know that, right? We got enough shit around here to prove that. We just don't have a great study to show it, well, guess what? Pornography, we know, and I think if we put data together, we could prove it, but we kind of know that women watching and consuming pornography is not as damaging as men doing it. Why do we know this? Because there's a burn of performance for men sexually, and men consuming a lot of pornography correlates with addiction and correlates with low sexual performance. Whereas women, I don't know that there's a lot of women addicted to pornography. Don't hear that very often. And I don't think that it affects their performance. You see what I'm saying? And so, but does it affect their ability to pair bond? Yeah, it does, and what it's doing is it's exposing them to in this way. But again, the nuance and the details matter though. If a girl is getting into really racy fantasy novels, and I would say reading it is much better for how it affects the brain using the imagination than seeing it and basically being a cuck and watching it play on screen. All right. So I would say reading it's better than seeing it. But let's say she's getting into the fantasy of all this stuff, right? That could be a good thing if she brings that fantasy to her sexual relationship. And if she's in the pair bond, wanting to live out all these fantasies with her man, I think that would actually be better for the pair bond. So I think it would be good in that sense. But if it's something to distract her and pull her away from the bond, which most often it usually is, unfortunately, then I would say it's bad for the pair bond. You see what I'm saying? Here's how the pair bond works. You got to feed the pair bond, right? You got to be diligent about having sex with each other, about increasing the intensity and value of that sex and the frequency. You got to be diligent about being sexual and romantic with each other, diligent about having good experiences with the person you're with, rather than just letting it happen, hoping it happens naturally. You got to be purposeful about that. If you're using pornography to distract yourself from doing that, then it's going to be problems, whether it's a man or a woman. You see what I mean? But that's a great one. So I'm going to continue reading this though, or I'm never going to get through with it. All right. So she writes, this may seem like an unfair assessment. So I'll share the few times I've been in the hospital since we've been married. The first time when I gave birth to our daughter, He wasn't there for the birth, but I believe this is excused because he was deployed at the time. Yeah. So this guy's a military guy, her husband. You can get leave if you're having a baby, but you don't always take that leave. You don't always get it, it's understandable if he's deployed. So, okay. What I think is important about this time is that he was permitted to come home for about a week to meet his child. During that time, we lived with his parents, and while he was home, he spent most of his time playing World of Warcraft with his brothers. He also contemplated leaving me home alone to visit a distant family member he barely knew who had just died. I might be a bitch, I think she said, for I don't know what this means, but for making him stay, but um I think she meant to say bitch, but she typed it in a weird way to not curse. For making him stay, but he'd be gone the whole week when he was permitted to come home because of his daughter. He seemed to get annoyed with me often during this week because of how often I asked for water while breastfeeding because I wasn't allowed to go out and get it myself. After the week, he went back, and it was 3 months until he was finally home for good. After that, I didn't need as much help because I had gotten the hang of being a mom a little better, so things seemed okay. I'm gonna pause there. Okay. Um, so this is a case of a guy not managing his inner game. Unfortunately, this happens to a lot of my military bros, right? It sounds like he was doing coping strategies for PTSD, which is pretty common. Burying yourself into video games is one of those things. You want to distract you become very apathetic, and you want to distract yourself from stressors because the stressors of deployments and combat are so high. You get home that you want to distract yourself from handling stressors at home. Common PTSD reaction. You have to manage that though, because you don't get to, unfortunately, you don't get to just shut down when you're at home, right? Not just indefinitely. You have to manage what's going on in your inner game, and then manage your relationship. So it sounds like this guy didn't manage his relationship. All right. So what you have here, there's nothing that this guy did wrong logistically. He came home to be with his daughter. He's paying the bills. He's working. He's deployed. She should be a supportive wife of that deployment. But notice how ungrateful and unsupportive she feels. The reason she feels ungrateful and unsupportive towards him is because she doesn't have vasopressin. He is not managing the desire in this relationship. He is not managing her desire. Deployment creates a problem because of the distance. You can't stimulate oxytocin in the same way from a distance. But guess what? You can stimulate fantasy and stimulate dopamine and stimulate other things to get a person to stay attracted and invested. Okay. And so, and it's a psychological game. I know because I've managed long distance with my military service. You can do it, but there's a skill set that it takes. And it sounds like that this guy didn't have that skill set, unfortunately. And so what happens is now his wife doesn't sees him as somebody who doesn't care, who feels like her and her child is a burden. And he's acting that way because of his PTSD coping strategies. And so what's happening is her desire is low. He didn't manage her desire. And so now she's resentful. Okay. And this will happen to any of you if you follow his same mistakes. I'll continue to read. The next time I was in the hospital, I was giving birth to our son. By this time, he was out of the military and he was able to be present for the birth. I had much more complications with my son, which resulted in more doctor's visits. And he was where thankfully, and he was there thankfully for most of it. I ended up having to be induced early because I was hypertensive. At that point, I kind of knew what I was doing, so I didn't ask for help from my husband, but still enjoyed his time off from work. Unfortunately, he decided his paternity leave was too long and asked to go back early, so he ended up missing my birthday because he chose to go back early. Okay, so notice even though he was there, there's still like this resentment. There's still this feeling that she has. The undertone of her communication is resentment, is feeling like, well, he went back early, because he didn't want to be around me. He didn't want to be around his kid. He doesn't care about me, whatever. You see what I mean? And so all this resentment is built up inside of her. Okay. And so remember, no vasopressin. So without desire, what builds? Resentment. And that's what you see here. Okay. So maybe he had good reasons for going back to work. Like we don't know the other side of it, but we know she resents it. Let's say he had good reasons for going back to work. How do you manage her and manage her desire differently using the game and seduction skills that I teach? He wouldn't be in this predicament. She would be speaking about his time with her with gratitude. She would be speaking about his time on deployment where he was absent with gratitude. You know what I mean? This is assuming that she has the capability of doing that. She's not a toxic person. I don't know really based on this whether she is or isn't. So far, no red flags to say that she is, but that doesn't mean she isn't. You know what I mean? But this is definitely looking like a situation where desire was not managed, right? So then she continues to write, the last time I was in the hospital was almost exactly a year before he got sepsis. I was to have surgery to get tubal ligation. Damn it. we had talked about no longer having kids because I started to fear pregnancy, something I'm understanding better with therapy. Okay, let's back up that for a second. She wanted to have kids with this guy when she saw him as the alpha guy, right? As the good choice, being his virgin bride and all that, right? But then what happens? As her desire goes down, she doesn't want to have kids with him anymore. She's no longer seeing this guy as the alpha guy in her life, you see, because the desire wasn't managed. So now she's fearful about having kids versus let's have more babies. You see, we weighed the pros and cons of vasectomy versus tubal ligation. Despite the vasectomy being cheaper and safer and a shorter recovery time, I was the one who was decided to go under the knife. So once again, she's resentful. And I don't know about that decision. Maybe that was a bad decision. Maybe it was a selfish decision on his part. It sounds like the guy is doing things to avoid his relationship and probably to avoid experiencing life due to, and I'm just noting this, due to the small signs she's suggesting of PTSD coping strategies. Well, guess what? Like her desire doesn't care about your PTSD, man. I hate to say that. That's for my military bros. Her desire doesn't care. She might care personally because she cares about you and she wants to be a good person, but her feelings of desire for you doesn't care. It can't care. It's a reaction. It's a gut reaction. Okay. And so you have to manage that even if you're going through it. All right. You don't get to check out as a man. That's the thing. You don't get to check out. That there's a bunch of benefits we got as men, and there's a bunch of limitations and struggles we got as men. One of those things is you don't get to check out. It's not what you get to do. Okay. You have a penis, right? Congratulations. You have higher testosterone, greater physical capabilities. Leadership falls on you. That could be good or bad. I think it's both, but I think it's good mostly, right? Well, guess what that means? You do not get to check out like ever in your whole life. That's it. Okay. Congratulations. You're a man. You don't get to check out. Unfortunately, that's what this guy's been doing. All right. So the day of the surgery, he couldn't get off work. So I was at risk of having to figure out how to get home while coming out of anesthesia. If it took too long, see, that's bullshit. Couldn't get out of work. Fuck you. Take the day off. You know what I'm saying? That is a guy who he's not executing that vasopressin for his romantic partner, probably because he's been checking out of the relationship instead of showing up, being a dominant president leadership of a man, right? He's not been executing his masculine dominance in his relationship, probably in other areas of his life. I would imagine he's checking out, he's withdrawing. So the vasopressin isn't doing what it's supposed to. You know what I mean? And so he's any guy I would not have my girlfriend, right? My girlfriend now of 3.5, going on 4 years. I wouldn't have her go into surgery and me not be there. I mean, there's deployments. If I'm in a third world shithole and I can't get out of it, that's one thing. Okay. But if I got a day now, I schedule my own work, right? But if I work for somebody else, I'm taking the day off. My girl is going into surgery. I mean, I don't want to hear any excuses. If your finances are so tight, you can't take that day off. That's another set of problems you have as a man to solve. Okay. And so that's it. There should be a very rare circumstance that should happen. Don't be the guy who doesn't show up to your girlfriend's surgery. Fucking, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? Okay. Back to it. I was still recovering. My husband talked about calling in sick because a new game released. Video game addiction, boys, which appalled me since he didn't offer to do the same for me when I was recovering. These are a few big examples that don't exactly cover what would happen day to day. I had realized during our whole marriage, I had been pretty severely neglected. All of these issues I would try to address and talk about, but were ultimately ignored as he would fall into bad habits. So I started picking apart our relationship and started to realize other issues like threatening to off himself when I set boundaries. So the truth comes out when this chick tries to stick up for herself, set a boundary, whatever, tries to prevent him from checking out. That's what it is. When she tries to do something to prevent him from checking out of the relationship, what's he doing? Threatening to off himself, right? That is not a guy who has his inner game together. This is not a guy who has his shit together. Unfortunately, this is a very common thing. Okay. I mean, I say very common, but it's common enough. It's common enough, right? And so, you know, using emotional manipulation as a man like that is not a man. That's not a man thing to do. You know what I mean? At that point, you're not behaving like a man. You're not leading properly, right? And so it's that is she's not going to respect you for that. She's not. No woman is going to be like, oh, oh no, you're going to off yourself. Let me come take care of you. Oh, you're right. Let me open my legs. Let's have sex, make it all better. Oh, you're right. I'm going to stop, whatever I'm doing here because it doesn't, it's not how it works. You're not going to make it. The name of the game is desire, guys. If you figured that out, excuse me. The name of the game is desire, and it's building it and maintaining it. So that means having a dominant masculine presence. Dominant masculine guys don't threaten off themselves. Okay. I'm not saying male, struggles with that isn't important to address. Plenty of dominant guys have had the thought. Plenty of dominant guys have had serious thoughts about taking themselves out. I would argue that if you are a man, that is a thought that crosses your mind at least once in your lifetime, even if it's just in joking or jest. Okay. Because as men, I've done other videos on it, but there's a whole reason why we're wired because we don't provide babies. That if we're not providing a certain type of value, we have run into a value gap. The signal to possibly take ourselves out of the gene pool so that the gene pool can survive, that's an instinct. So it's instinctual. Unlike other characteristics have to be in place for a woman to have that instinct. Women don't usually do this, which is why their rates of success for taking themselves out is much lower than a man's. Men, we have an epidemic. I won't say the word for algorithm purposes, but we have an epidemic of men self-harming and taking themselves out, right? That epidemic is partially part of our instinct. So having the instinct doesn't mean you're weak, but leveraging that thought to your wife to get her to not set a boundary or to get her to do what you want, that is the part that is very, very weak. You know, dominant masculine guys don't make that choice to actually listen to that little voice in their head when it pops up and it tells them to take themselves out. You know, see what I'm saying? So we know now this guy, just based on that, if that's what's happening, unless she's blatantly lying in when she wrote this, if that's what's happening, this guy is not showing up as a leader of that house. And so what's happening? She doesn't respect him and she resents him. Right. And so then he gets sick. And do you think she wants to take care of him? No. See, a woman can do a lot of things to a man, make him not respect her even because of some of the things she does. And he'll still take care of her when he has the vasopressin and when he's being a dominant masculine leader. I'm not saying he should either, though. That's another thing. But he'll still have the instinct to take care of her. She won't. She's going to resent you. Okay. So continuing. So I started picking apart our relationship issues, realized there are other issues like him threatening to off himself when I set boundaries or pressuring me into sex, even after I said no. Yeah, she doesn't want to have sex with a guy she doesn't desire. She doesn't want to have sex with a guy she doesn't respect. Okay. And then so of course she's going to say no to sex or refusing some of my necessities because of money issues and then turning around and buying a new game or Warhammer. I've told him about wanting a divorce and he threatened to off himself. So instead, we are in therapy. I still feel disconnected and done with the relationship, and I'm not sure if I can fix it. I just feel so lost. What would be your advice on how to proceed? Anyway, so that was the rest of that. Okay. So it's a great question. I'm going to address it. I think it would take a lot of balls to self-delete. Yeah, I mean, balls, I don't know. I would think a lot of despair, more or less, a lot of misery, a really bad mental framework. I think it takes more, I would disagree with that. I think it takes more balls when you have, let's say you're at a point in your life where you've lost something significant. It's going to change you for the rest of your life as a man. Maybe you've zeroed yourself out. Let's say your woman cheats on you and is breaking up or divorcing. You're about to, your financial struggles are high. Maybe you lose a job. You're about to lose a job, right? Your woman's leaving you, which sends a message to your brain that you're not even valuable as a mating partner. Like your babies, your offspring are not valuable enough to the world. Like, you know what I mean? Sends a message like that by cheating on you, cucking you, breaking it off with you. And then, of course, you're in financial struggles and maybe you've let yourself go. So you're not as physically capable as you used to be. Like you're basically a loser, right? Let's say in one or two, because many of you guys listening to me right now are one or two moves away from being a loser. You're doing well on the surface, but in two chess moves, you're fucked. You're a loser. Most, if not many guys are in that spot. This is the thing about relationship skills. You think you're good until you're not good. You're one or two moves away. Okay. So let's say those one or two moves happens to you and you're feeling like, dude, I just want to take myself out. I think it takes more balls to not do that. I think it takes more balls to feel like an utter failure, to feel ashamed, to feel like embarrassed. Let's say you got caught even doing something you shouldn't have, whatever, like to be at the lowest point of your life and then to ignore, to say, you know what, I'm not going to respond to that instinctual message that tells me to take myself out. I'm instead going to start fighting through and building value again as a man. I think it takes more balls to do that, quite personally, right? I mean, it's not really a lot of balls to squeeze the trigger on yourself. I mean, not really. It's just easy to do. It's just do that. I don't understand. I mean, again, I'm messed up in my head. Okay, I got combat stuff experience, and I'm good at certain things. That puts me on the scale of not normal in some ways. So squeezing a trigger to me feels very normal. Maybe that's harder for other guys, Okay. But to me, that's not balls. To me, balls is fighting through it. You know what I mean? Um, so, so yeah, you have to do when you have that, I'm going to tell you what happens. When you have that feeling, what you got to do is you got to recognize that the feeling's there. All right, cool. I feel like I want to take myself out. Then what you want to do, if it's an overwhelming feeling, like you need to talk to somebody, you don't need to talk about even the feelings you're having. You just need to contact somebody and have a normal conversation. Go for a walk, go to a mall, go for a drive. You know what I mean? You need to remove things around yourself that would cause you to take on that impulse. Okay. Disarm yourself if you're an armed person, for example. All right. And just go have a normal conversation with people. That I know it sounds weird, but it doesn't have to be about your struggles. Doesn't have to be about anything in particular. It could be all about tell me how your day was, right? What it does is it roots you back into reality for that moment, and it takes away the impulse. Do not do things like getting wasted and getting drunk, things to reduce your impulse control, because that's most people are able to go through with stuff like that because they reduce their impulse control with drugs or alcohol. So there's a surefire way of of making a decision you can't take back. So don't be wallowing in your sorrows in a bottle of whiskey on top of everything, because then you don't have the impulse control. But there's times when it comes from the brain, dude. Let me tell you, take this serious, okay? It's an instinct. It comes from the brain, where the brain will start sending these overwhelming messages for you to take yourself out. When certain stimulus is there, you could have a moment where it sends these overwhelming messages to your brain. How do we know this is true? Well, notice that certain medication have as a warning that it could cause this to happen, right? Why do you think certain medication has it as a warning? Well, it's because medication that affects the brain can create a chain reaction in the brain where these messages of what we'll call self-selecting or taking yourself out become overwhelming. I've been in consults with people who have been on certain types of pain medications or psychological medications. I've been in our therapy sessions, right? And they are crying and they have this overwhelming, this persistent feeling of wanting to do this. And sometimes it's overwhelming. I ask them what their medication is. I have them adjust their medication. I am not a doctor who can adjust their medication. So they talk to the doctor to have their medication adjusted. And then those feelings go away. So in those cases, the medication was causing the overwhelming feeling. But for men, that feeling that's overwhelming, it's not real, dude. It's not real. Understand, it's not, none of it's real. It's your brain just sending a stimulus. Just like when an addict is like, oh, I need to do heroin or something, right? That's not real either. It's only the brain sending stimulus telling them they have to do it. But there's nothing real about that. You know what I mean? That makes sense. So the stimulus to tell you to take yourself out, when you guys have it, if any of you have experienced that, I know some of you have, and I'm not talking to just about a fleeting thought, but for sometimes someone will be in a spot and it's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be like, I have to do this right now. You know, like, I don't know how to explain it. You have to just break that pattern, and then that overwhelming feeling goes away. The best way to break it is just talking to another human being, because we're social animals who are designed to connect with other people. Now, for a man, that's not going to be enough to permanently fix it. Okay. Just talking to your brothers, like the military tells you to do, for example, isn't enough. All right. That works for girls, doesn't work for guys. And the thing that you're least likely to do as a man is reach out to another man to talk to him when you feel like you have low value. That's unfortunately the condition of this for men is that we need to feel like we provide value to the tribe. And if we don't feel like we provide that value, then we're going to self-isolate and take ourselves out of the tribe. That's the instinct in your monkey brain. So when this happens, you're doing what your instincts are telling you, but your instincts are not correct. Okay. Objectively correct as the best thing for you. You know what I mean? Our instincts tell us to do shit all the time we shouldn't do. This would be one of them. And so when you have that overwhelming feeling, you just got to connect with somebody that temporarily takes the feeling away. That's temporary now. Then from there, though, you have to find a place to build value. I don't care if you go to an AA meeting and become someone's sponsor or just talk to other people who are struggling. I don't care if you go to a homeless shelter and volunteer, and that's the way to provide value. I don't care if it's the lowest thing that you think it is on earth. I don't care if you decide to take all of your items and bullshit that you don't need in your basement and organize it and donate it to a homeless shelter, to like to a good, to Salvation Army, something like that. I mean, that if that gives you a sense of value, contributing to the world in some way, that's what it is. You have to provide value as a man in some way. And when you feel like you have no value, all it is effort. All you have to do is step out your bubble and go do something to provide value somewhere. It doesn't end there, but that's the start. Now, from there, you start saying, how can I build my value up as a man? What can I do next? What value, what value can I provide the world? Right. And you start pursuing that, usually job, vocation, relationships, all those things. You start rebuilding. That doesn't happen overnight. Okay. So there's your prescription. There's your prescription for solving that problem. And we got, you just described me, but I cannot reach out to you. Why can't you reach out to me? Bro, I have a link. I'm pretty accessible. I'm talking to you right now on a live stream. I am not this unattainable person. I hope to never become that way, even though I want to be hugely popular. I want to be like Tony Robbins popular, but I want to be able to be accessible for stuff sometimes. I know it's going to be really struggle. I would love that to be my biggest struggle. Right now, I have a popularity problem because algorithms don't like me. Even this conversation probably is going to blow this video up, and YouTube will be like, oh no, men's mental health. We can't help that along. And the algorithms are going to suppress this video anyway. But I'm pretty accessible, dude. Like, I got a link. You could join the community. You could post what you're going through. You got about 10 guys. I don't know. Maybe it takes a week for them for full 10 to respond. Some will respond right away. But you'll get a bunch of responses if you just post right now on my community. You're fucked up right now. Go to my community. Tell me why you're fucked up. Tell me what is fucked up right now. You can send me a DM there too. We can talk there. Yeah, if we take it into therapy or coaching or whatever, that's going to cost some money. But I have all these free resources for you that will help you, like for free. You're here talking to me, that's free. You go to the community, that doesn't cost anything. Getting feedback, getting an action plan, getting a roadmap, that's not going to cost anything if you are in a financial distress, And then there's there's the reason things cost things is because I have to survive. Unfortunately, I have to build a business or I can't help anybody. But the other side of it, though, is, when people are invested in their success financially, then they're going to do the work. And that's the other part of it, And so, but you may not be able to logistically be able to, if that's your situation. But guess what? I got all the shit for free. I do that for a reason, bro. Like I do the free stuff for a reason. It's not just to market myself. It's for exactly what you're dealing with. It's for a guy who's like, I am struggling right now and I don't know where to go, what to do. Well, I only say it every video. I do. Click the link, join the community, shoot me a DM. You know what I'm saying? So there you go, man. That's what you got to do, bro. It makes sense. Fuck yeah, dude. All right. All right, man. Good. So you know what to do. Okay. And that's all, you guys. If you're not in the community, what the hell's wrong with you? Now, all right. So let me caveat on the community though. Okay. When somebody gives me like a long story about their relationship problem, which I like, by the way. I'm not saying don't do that. They're dealing with a relationship, dealing with this, and they're doing this. I am going to call you out on stuff too. I mean, I'm not a dick. I can be kind of a dick, but I mean, it's all in love though. Like, right? I want you guys to do better. And so, like, I'm going to call shit out. I'm going to ask questions that are hard and maybe uncomfortable. You know what I mean? When somebody says, "Hey, I've been like married for 25 years and we haven't had sex in the last, year and this, that, and I'm doing all these fucked up things, or I'm doing these things and I don't know what to do." I'm probably going to start picking that thing apart and calling them out on all the things that he's fucking up. And some of that might be like, you're going to continue to do the same stupid thing for the next 25 years. If the first 25 hasn't been good, or are you ready to take some action? That may be what I say, right? Like, if you guys follow me enough, I don't bullshit around. And some of that is me really telling you the hard thing you need to hear so you can start to make the moves, because at the end of the day, it's making moves and taking action that's going to help you. It's not, it's not just jerking off on YouTube or something, right? And then converting it to porn later or something, right? You have to take action, right? And so that's the one caveat. I'm not saying that to you. Don't be afraid to post, dump it all out, right? Like, nobody is going to shame you for it, but there will be calling you out though on things you're doing wrong. But that's because we want to help you. All right. And I'm not that harsh, really. I got some of my guys who are high value guys who got their shit together, can be a little bit harsh on there, but they do it because they mean well. And by saying, "Hey, dude, like, you're telling yourself a story right now and it's all bullshit," like, if that's what he has to tell you, he's telling you that because they want you to do better. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, this exact thing, man, like, Rick, this exact thing is why I do the free stuff. You know what I mean? Um, that's why I do it. Okay. So you have a place to go. None of you guys who've come across my channel are stuck with nowhere to go if you're fucked or if you're zeroed out. If you have internet access and you can go into the community, you got a place to go. Right. And you got people who will respond there to you. And it's going to be up to you to take action to make things better for yourself. Nobody can do that for you, but you're not alone and lost. There will be direction for you. There will be action. If you can't afford me, I'm not cheap. It's only going to get worse after the first of the year, by the way. So I'm not cheap for a reason. That being said, though, you're not going to be left with no place to go if you can't afford me. All right. That's for sure. I promise you that. I think it's a good place to end the stream though, right? So, I mean, my conclusion here, of course, is that, guys, you got to learn the skills. You got to learn the skills in inner game. You got to learn the skills in managing the relationships, right? In managing women, managing dating. It's not just managing women. I said this in my last video on Sharon Moore. If you want to watch that one after this one, I posted it yesterday. It's pretty decent. It's a lot shorter. But I said in that video, it's not just understanding women. It's understanding yourself with women. It's understanding and being able to direct your own behavior with women. That's what it is. That's where the skills are. It's not just knowledge. There's tons of like good relationship stuff out there, red pill as well as not red pill. If you go buy Gottman's work or something, that's pretty good. The Evo Psych stuff is pretty good. Your Rational Male series, Ryan Stone books, Paul Bauer books. I'll have a book someday. My channel, right? I mean, there's all the good stuff out there for you just to read and digest stuff. But that's not going to help. That's only a step, though. That's not going to get you out of the problem. What gets you out of the problem is skill development. And there's a process to that. And that's what we do in the community. I can direct you in that way. That's what we do in courses. That's what we do in coaching. Okay. But you have to develop skills so that you can get the things that you want. And that's the moral of the story. I mean, it is important that girls are going to have a lot less problems. I mean, if they watch their notch counts, we'll say, like, reading this story, it doesn't sound like some 304, does it? I want you guys to notice that. So on the other side of the virginity angle, okay, on the other side of the virginity angle, notice that this woman who's only had one body in her whole life, if she's telling the truth in this story, notice that she doesn't sound like some ratchet TikTok 304 who's been through 50 guys. Notice that she doesn't sound like the same girl that you're going on a date with, that you met on Tinder, that you know has been sleeping around. You know, notice that the way that she talks and her values and the things she's concerned about are coming from a woman who has a low body count and who's interested in pair bonding versus some woman with a high body count who doesn't even know how to be interested in pair bonding or to behave that way. So that's the other side of it. All right. Virginity, having a virgin bride, having low body count isn't going to solve all your problems. It's not going to save you, but it does help. It does help. It does help when a woman has the right kinds of behaviors and ways of mentally framing things because of her past experiences, right? And if you're a woman listening to this and you've had a high body count, you're 304, you're from the streets, get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what if that's you. All right. That just means you have to learn different skills and do different things so you can sound like, be like, and embody the woman who is capable of pair bonding. You have to be that person, you know, and you have to figure out how to do that because there isn't a good roadmap for it. I do consults with women, but you know, I'm expensive. So not everybody wants to be able to do that. Right. But that's the thing. If you're a girl listening, if you're a guy who's with that girl, just understand, you know, she's got to do some things to be more like the pair bonding type girl. And she is probably going to have struggles in doing that. That's just what it is. So you'll have to deal with that. Right. And thanks, man. I'm glad you caught me live. And I'm glad all of you guys caught me live. So make sure you do the right things, join the community, help the algorithms out with those subscriptions and those like buttons and all that. And I'll catch you on the next one.